Hi there, welcome to video number 10, looking at the black square king air using axis of O's, of course. And this one is all about the X-Touch MIDI controller. So this is probably the best way of me going through all the other instruments that I have programmed in, because they're all controlled by the X-Touch MIDI controller and not the Stream Deck. So let's have a look at the controller. Diagram that I put together to explain this MIDI controller. It comes from music hardware really, but it's very versatile for simulators as well. It's got 8 rotary switches, and these are rotaries that go completely around infinitely in each direction. Some of the MIDI controllers on the market from other companies have a stop when you get to a full revolution. This one goes completely round, and also it's a switch in its own right as well. If you press down on the rotary, it's got a switch that engages at the back, so it detects an event. And the same with these. There are 16 soft buttons. They don't latch or anything like that. You just press and they connect at the back, and again trigger an event. I've left off of here for the diagram 2 other buttons that put it into 2 different modes, A and B, sort of bank A, bank B. So that means every control actually has 2 functions, or can have 2 functions allocated to it, one for bank A, one for bank B. What I do is I put a label above when it's in mode A, and then below is in mode B, sort of bank B. So part of it is designing a layout so that you don't have to keep swapping banks. So things that need to work together have to be, well, it's wise to put on the same bank. And generally I keep bank A for things I'm going to need frequently in flight, and things on bank B as things you go for occasionally, or perhaps only say in the run-up testing or something like that, or an emergency situation. So let's get into looking at the cockpit and see where I'm sort of heading with this. Get some electronics and avionics going. This is the area we'll be working on here mostly today. So anything with a it needs a rotary working with it. You've got various layouts that you can create, and it's controlled with these 2 buttons over here. So at the moment, this is sort of very much the analog setup. You've always got this weather radar here, and part of the point with that is that Black Square use that to give you an interface for failures and repairs and that kind of stuff. So it's always going to be there. My preferred setup is to have a Garmin here, the 530. Let's sort of zoom in on that, and some of the analog equipment. You can have a more up-to-date GPS as well. I've never really worked well with this. Programming it hasn't been easy. It's a touch screen, so I tend to stick sort of 1 generation back with that Garmin there. And on the other selector, you can put a second GPS up, reducing the amount of sort of the old analog gear. But this is sort of my preferred setup. This is what I usually work with. So we're going to work firstly with the GPS. That's the main thing that I want to use the my X-Touch for. So over here we've got 2 rotaries, one stacked inside the other, sort of coaxial rotaries. So we've got one here which will control the gigahertz, and the outside one controls the megahertz. So we're going to be emulating that on one of the rotaries. There is a push button on the end of this, and that's used to change whether it's going to be working with the comms or with the nav side of things. So that switches between those. And these buttons here switch that between standby and active, and same with that one there. So let's get in and have a look at how I laid out and how it's programmed. So this is color coding is just to sort of show that they all stay together, all for one of the instruments. So this is the button here, or the rotary here, that does the megahertz and kilohertz, and pressing the end of it toggles it between the two, between megahertz and kilohertz. So it doesn't do the swap between comms and navigation. That's done with a separate button over here. So let's go in and look at what's going on behind the scenes. So I'm going to turn the rotary, and you'll see that it's triggering these ones here, which are scripts I've written for increasing or decreasing the megahertz and kilohertz, and it works with this toggle. So that's a script I've written to toggle, and you can see when I press it, I'm pressing on the end of that rotary. So let's go and have a look at that script. Just going to filter down using megahertz, and it's here. This is the toggle, and what I do is I've got can we make that bigger? There we go. I've created my own variable here. It's an L variable, local variable. You can make any variable you like just by typing it in, but to make sure it doesn't clash with anything that any other program has done, I've just called it my megahertz toggle. And the toggle works, as you've probably seen before. It reads the value, inverts it, so if it's 0 it becomes a 1, and then you write it back into the variable, and likewise a 1 will become a 0. So that's the toggle working. This is the increase script, so it checks that variable, and if it's at 0 then it's going to add 1 to the megahertz. If it's not 0, it'll do this one, it'll add 1 to the kilohertz, and it's just writing it to the device. Whether it's going to go to the comms or the nav, we'll show you what that is in a second. Here's the decrease version. So again, just checking if we're supposed to be writing to megahertz or to kilohertz, and it's doing a -1 to this input event, to the megahertz or to the kilohertz. If I press on that CV button, this is the one that switches it between adjusting the comms or the nav. It's this one here, and it's a straightforward variable. We're not going to use a script. It's actually writing to a B variable, and it's toggling that CV push, and all the logic for this, that is internal to the actual GPS unit itself. If I just show you how you get that, I'll do it as if I'm setting up a new event. Drop that down here, and we'll be looking in here at the Microsoft events, and it's got all the possible events for the A530 here. Let's filter down and just look for the push, CV push. And you can see I've got a 1 and a 2, because you could have the cockpit set up with 2 A530s, and it's number 1 that we're going for. So if I just double click on this input event, it will actually filter down automatically and pick that one there, the toggle one. You could go in and use that directly, but for speed, just doing that, you see, actually selects it. and then you press the button that you want to allocate it to, click add, and it's done. So that's that one there, that one there. Now we need these two swaps, the COM swap and the nav swap. So they're the ones that take it from being the standby to the active. If I press one of those, again, it's exactly the same thing as the other one. Finding that input event, double clicking on it, putting it in there, pressing the button, and that's the COM swap. And the nav swap is here, so that'll be taking the nav standby and making it active. Okay, so that's all the sort of tuning your radios stuff there. The last one here, occasionally it goes a bit haywire, and it changes the spacing on the kilohertz side, and the spacing becomes too large. It kind of acts like an older fashioned radio. So I've got it on here, it's on bank B, so I don't use it very often, just when things go a bit weird. And what it does is it toggles backwards and forwards the spacing, how far the kilohertz should increase or decrease when you dial it in. So it's a K event, and it's a COM1 spacing mode switch. So you just add that to that button there. Okay, let's go back here. So if I go back into the cockpit, this one here again is stacked rotaries, and it's the button that controls what's going on here as you step through the various things and input data. So you've got an outer and an inner, and you've got that push which brings up a cursor. If you were say going to add stuff into the flight plan, you'd push that button and it gives you a flashing cursor. Push it again and it goes away. So we need to get that working. So I can't have the push button on the end here being the cursor, because I'm using that to toggle between the in and the outer. So we've got the cursor button down here. Let's deal with this first of all. So as before, we're going to have a push button on the end to do the toggling. So it's a script which does a toggle. I'm fairly sure you can work out what the script looks like, but I'll show it to you anyway. Let's narrow that down a bit. There we are. So my inner toggle, as I've called it, there's my variable, and that's it being toggled. And that's what it's going to check when we do the increase and the decrease, which will be allocated to clockwise and anti-clockwise turns. So that's the script for it. It kind of surprised me. I hadn't realised I'd used two different methods, but it worth you seeing the two different methods. So it's checking the inner, that toggle thing there, and if it's a 0, it's going to write to the outer. If it's not a 0, it must be a 1, it's going to write to the inner. And this one I've written to it using the input event. And this one I went straight for the B variable, and it's got its own function for increase. Just so you know how that's allocated, let's give that a twiddle. It's twiddled basically here. You turn the rotary, and the X-Touch Mini detects it. What you need to be cautious of is that when you first turn it, it just knows that you've clicked it. It doesn't know which direction. It's not until you get a second click in the same direction that sort of confirms where you're going. If I try to demonstrate here, if I move it once, it just knows it's a click. And it's not until I give it a second move, it knows that, oh, that's turning it to the right. And the same if you're turning it to the left. Once it's had a couple of clicks, it knows which way you're going. So just be aware of that. Okay, so back to that scripting stuff. showed you the increase one. The decrease one, I did the same thing. For some reason, I went for, when we use the outer, I use the input event, so that's going to be a -1. And for this one here, I've actually used the decrease function for the inner. So again, you write a 1 to the decrease, and it knows that you'll mean to take 1 off of it to decrease it by 1. I've left it there so you can see both possible methods. It doesn't matter which one you use, they both work exactly the same. So the cursor button here, if I press on that, it's here, and again it's a straightforward write to a variable, no script involved in that, so it's an input event that's being put into here. In fact, as we move along here, all of these are just using a straightforward input event, so you just do the same thing. You just hunt down the input event and type it in. So if I go along and press up them all, then you'll see here, there's the CDI one, there's the OBS one down here, there's the message one, flight plan, there's your VNav, and there's the procedure. So take this one for instance. You will just go down, hunt down the input event, double click on it, press on the button that you want, save, it's done. So that's really quite quick to do. One that's here that's slightly different is the range button. If I click on the range, and you'll see where that is. It's going to use the same function for both zoom in and zoom out. And this one here has the value 1 being sent to it, and this one has the value -1 being sent to it. And you change that just by turning the wheel on the mouse and then pressing save. Direct to, again, there is direct to there. Menu the same. Enter is the same. The clear is the one that's different. It's got two functions on the actual GPS itself. It's got a short clear, which will delete the last entry you made, and a long clear, which will take you back to the sort of default page of the GPS if you've kind of got stuck somewhere, don't know how to get back. When you get back quickly to the front page, holding it down is a long clear. So that button there actually has two variables added to it. Well, it's the same variable. It's the same function, different variables. So click here to enable the long click to come up. The short click sends a 1, so that is telling it just to delete the last thing you've entered. And the long press, and you determine how long a long click is down here, sends a 0 to it, and that should act as a long click as if you did it on the actual GPS itself. Okay, then that's it then for the GPS. Let's move on to the next one, the transponder. The color coding is not important at all. It's just to make it clear as you're watching this that that's one instrument and this is another instrument. Yeah. So let's have a look at what the transponder looks like in the cockpit. And so that's down here. And again, it's stacked rotaries here. This outside rotary is going to do the rear one does the hundreds and the thousands. It is octal, so it's not actually hundreds and thousands. When it gets to 7, it's going to click over. So as you can see, it's not really hundreds and thousands, but you got the point. And this one does the units and the next column. So we need to switch between those. And we've got this thing here of the different modes that it can be in. And we're going to do all of that with one rotary. So the rotary here, we need to be able to change it between the hundreds and the tens, basically, or whatever you're going to call it. So one short click on there will make that change. So we need a toggle for that. And we have a long one, which is going to, a long press, which is going to take us and step us through the modes. If I show you that working in the actual cockpit, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some long presses on the expander button, and you see it steps through and goes to standby, to off, back to on, and it just steps through that sequence. So we'll come to that in a second. Firstly, let's deal with the usual toggle, the easy toggle, which is here. So on that button I have short click being the toggle and the long click being the state, which we'll come back to. The toggle my scripts editor. Here's my expander toggle, and it's the same format as all the others, just choosing a different variable. The increase is pretty much the same as before, that we need to check whether we're doing the rear large button, the big button, or the small button. Unusually, we're going to use an H variable for this one, and this is the model number of the expander, and we're going to increase the big one or increase the small one. So that's the increase one, decrease one, same structure, checking that variable and writing to the same device, but a big decrease or a small decrease. So depends on whether we're doing the big button or the small button. So that's pretty simple. The state, the one which is on the long press, changing the state of it, is a bit more complex. What we want to do is to step through this sequence from 0 to 1. There is no mode 2, to 3 to 4, back to 3, back to 1, and then start again at 0. So we're going to step through that. We're going to use a function called the indexed sequence. There is a function for the sequence one, but it wouldn't work for this because we've got repeated values. And what it does is it looks at the value and then puts the next one in and makes that the current value. But as soon as if it ever gets to 1, it will always go to there. It will never get past it to here. So we use an indexed sequence. We keep an index so it knows where to start the search next time you use it. So if it stops here, it will know to move on and go to there. So to make this work, you're using that built-in function, and it will update it and put the next state and write it back in. And you use your own homemade index function to keep track of where you are. And the last thing here is this 6 tells it that there are 6, expect 6 values. That's how long the sequence is going to be. And as you press it, it just steps through one at a time. Okay, that's probably the most complex part of what we're doing today, is getting that sequence thing to work. So we can control that, and that works. Next up is 2 different functions on the same button. This one here is for the barometer, for adjusting the pressure, and this one here it syncs the heading bug up to the direction that you are facing. So it says if you want to hold get on a heading that you're going on, you don't have to twiddle a button to make the heading come around. You can do it, and I've used the one on the throttle quadrant, but you can also just at one quick click of a button sync the two, and it drives the heading bug around. So let's have a look at the different functions for that. If I turn it, you'll see that it's doing what's called the Colesman, and it's an old, really old It's been around forever, this particular function. So it's a K function, and there's an increment, and guess what? There's a decrement version of the same. So you can do one for clockwise, one for anti-clockwise. The heading sync one, if I press on the button, there we go, there we are. It's a script that's been around for quite a long while to show you this one working. It's in this basic area here, and what it does is it reads the gyro thinks you're heading, looks at your plane heading, and writes it into where the heading bug is set for. So it just picks that up, puts it into there, and that's how it syncs the two together. Next one is the nav2. We've got two navs, one controlled by the Garmin, and one controlled by this one here, the nav2. Now, I'm not using this to its fullest extent because you can store things into memory and call those up. What I'm going to do is just use the transfer and transfer this one here, the standby, to the active. So it's the usual thing. That one controlling the megahertz, this is controlling the kilohertz. I'm not playing at all with this one. I'm just using this in a very basic way. So change the figures here and transfer them across. That controls this one here. Okay. So what I want to do is to turn that nav to, and here's my increase and decrease, and press the button and it's the toggle. So we want to look at nav2 in our scripting. So we've got a toggle with a fairly imaginative name. We've got the increase, again, checking which one we're going to do. Is it the small button or the large button that we're doing? And we're writing, that's the device name, writing to the H variable, whether we're going to increase the small or the large knob that we're turning. Decrease being exactly the same thing, but this is a decrement version of it. And the transfer is writing one into the transfer switch of that device. So not too difficult to get that one working. That works hand in hand with the VOR2, because if we go over here, we need to be able to change the bearing that we're looking at. So as I rotate the knob, you want that to move. And that, I'll bring that over to life. Is very simply, again, it's a built-in function. So it's a K function, the VOR2, OBI, a decrement, and obviously the increment on the other one. So you've got one for the clockwise, one for the anti-clockwise. Next one across is the ADF, and it's very similar devices. So the actual techniques are very, very similar. If we go and have a look at where that is. So it's over here. So we've got the usual stacked rotaries that we have to deal with. Not really playing too much with this one here. So I need to be able to toggle between those. So that's a short press on the button, and a long press is the transfer. I kind of leave it on ADF all the time anyway. So let's have a look at how that's programmed up. So we've got the ADF increase and decrease and toggle. So if we go into here, there's the usual toggle. Here's the increase. So again, it's the model number. We're using the H variable for that to do the small increase or the large increase. And same for the decrease. And the transfer, again, exactly the same as before. The model number of the device hitting its transfer switch, and it moves, just does it the transfer. The next one, of course, is the meter mode and the battery mode. And that is, if I can find the right one, up here, over in the overhead panel. It's this one here. So it goes through various settings so you can see what's going on in terms of the DC side of things. I'm using this on external power at the moment, so it's reading the voltage. Now the battery one is an unusual one because it's sort of spring loaded, so you push against it, and as soon as you let go with your finger, it flicks back. So that's what we're going to sort of emulate. So this meter mode here, I've got a meter mode increase and decrease. So meter mode increase just literally reads that variable and adds 1 to it and moves it on up. And it will stop at mode 4 because there isn't mode 5. And it just doesn't go above that. It's sort of barriered. The decrease version isn't, so we have to actually make sure it's already above 0. If you didn't put that in there, as you decrease it, it'll go below 0, which is going to cause problems. So the meter mode for the decrease has got to have this check, make sure we are above 0, and if we are, we can then get on with reducing the number back to 0. So that deals with the sort of main modes, but we haven't got as far as the battery one. So I need to write 2 things to it. If I sort of show you the battery, when I press the battery button here, I actually gone away from having this script because I wanted 2 things to happen. I wanted a key down event to put it into mode 6, and then when I release the key to drop it back into mode 4, and it was easier just to write straight to the variable that I wanted, putting in a 6 and a 4 rather than trying to write script for it. So that's how I've done the battery mode. So if I press the button for the battery now, you see it flips over to there and back again, so it does read the battery. It'll read it from anywhere, so if I was there, if I press the button now, it will jump straight to battery mode and straight back to mode into 4, not to where it came from. You could play around with the programming if you wanted to do that, but in the real world you would go battery and back to 4, so I've left it at that. Okay, so that's really about it for bank A. Uh, Everything up here is all taken up. We've dealt with all of those, and we've dealt with all of those. What I'm going to do is I'll make a break now, and we'll do part 2 of this video, so we'll look at what's on bank B. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video.